Hello and welcome back to the garden for the second part of my kind of final clearing up and planting videos. So in the first part I waffled on a bit too long and got sidetracked with some other stuff, and all I managed to get done was basically clear this greenhouse of the old plants, and I've given it a bit of a weeding now. It's not perfect, but I think it's good enough, and I've given the soil a quick rake over. That's a little bit tricky with the soaker hose still laid out here. It's not switched on, but I'm not packing it away either. I will have to lift that up when I mulch this bed later. That will be in the spring, ready for planting the tomatoes and peppers again. But for now, I've got garlic to go in, and I've got some young plants. Now everything is a bit late because the first batch of plants, they got wiped out by caterpillars. Unfortunately, some cabbage whites got on them and they decimated them. And that's a pity because they were doing quite nicely and they'd have been ready at the right sort of time. So these plants, they're all going to be a little bit small, and they should have been in here growing away for a few weeks already. The light levels are a bit miserable now and the temperature is cooling down. Growth is going to be pretty slow. Nonetheless, I should get some leaves off of these, and maybe some of these plants will have to wait until things pick up in the late winter or early spring before I get much more growth out of them, but that's fine. They can just sit here until then. So the first thing I want to plant in here is some garlic. Now I've already done more than enough garlic already. I've got quite a bit outdoors. That's some really great garlic. It's a French red variety from seeds of Italy. Really good cloves. Quite a lot of that is already showing up. I got that in some weeks ago. Most of them have appeared, I think, now. There are still a few more that I hope will make an appearance. If not, I do have a few spares. I don't normally need them. They're usually pretty reliable. And in the polytunnel, I've got a couple of varieties I picked up from the garlic farm. That's Provence and Carcassonne. Now those bulbs, they weren't great quality, to be honest. I was very disappointed with them. However, they did send some replacements, and because of that, I do have plenty of cloves. I've got a 30 odd of each variety planted in the polytunnel all the way around the outside, but I've still got some spares from those and I don't want to waste them. I probably don't need more full-sized bulbs. That is already quite a lot of garlic. So what I probably want to do is take some of these when they're young in the spring for green garlic, and they're lovely like that. So I might as well use these cloves up, and I thought I'd get them in the greenhouse. I've been debating where to put them actually, because the border on this side, I don't use that too much. So in theory, that would be a great place to put them, but the soil's not brilliant because I've got lots of the tree roots in there and the grapevine. So I don't know. I mean, it's fertile enough, but it's difficult to get plants in there because of the roots, and I'm not sure about that. And then I was thinking about along the wall, but I've got a couple of problems there too. So I've got this reinforcing mesh that I have put in here as some trellising, and I tied the tomatoes into this year. It worked very nicely. I'm quite happy with it. But I don't want to take this out of the way, and the sort of the bottom rail of it is there. Now, I could plant along the front, and that would be quite nice. I would have to leave space for the tomato plants. At the moment, they're going at about, I don't know, 2.5 of these. So they would go here, and I get room for 2 or 3 cloves in between them, and that's what I did in the polytunnel. the thing is, I really want to put basil in between these, and if I do leave the garlic here beyond May, then these are going to be in the way. Now I think there's just enough room to slip a clove in behind this trellis. However, I've got this wall here. It'll be a bit shaded. South is that way, so this is a shady spot, and I'm a little bit concerned that they would start to grow up rather weak and spindly. So I think this is not a good place to plant them. So I think that this end of the greenhouse is probably a better bet. If I plant here in front of the apricot, it's not going to get in the way. The first tomato plant goes in here. So I've got a little bit of room here. I can put some more rows further along. It's not going to shade anything, but it's also going to be a slightly better place to plant. So just to give me an idea, I've got my trusty plank, which I have marked with various spacings. And this one is at 5.5 inches, and I think that would be fine to use here. So let's start with the first. Well, if I put a, that's going to be in my way. Let's just start making a few holes. This is probably not quite as good a planting site as in the polytunnel, but I don't need these. I don't necessarily need these to grow particularly well in here. Not if I'm just going to take them when they're quite young. As usual, I'm planting these so that there's a couple of inches from the top of the bulb to the soil level. They want to be planted reasonably deep. And yeah, that will do fine. And that soaker hose is in my way now, so I'll just move that across. About there. Oh, that'll be okay. So some of these are a little bit on the small side, but these are the spares, so that's not a problem. Now, if I can make some reasonable holes here, depends what I hit. I'm going to try just a few here. I'm curious to see how they do. They might not do well at all, but we'll see what happens. These are quite fat bulbs. These are nice. Actually, I need to make that hole a bit wider. Right, I've just got a few more and I will drop them in here. So what have I got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 7. So I think what I'll do is just stagger these one row in here. So the soil along this wall tends to stay pretty wet actually, and all along the back wall. So that's good. I shouldn't have to worry too much about watering them. And yeah, if I then stagger the others. Right, they're not going to get in my way there next year. Right, now to some of these young plants. Now, this is the one that's really annoying me. This was supposed to be Komatsuna, and I've obviously got some dodgy seed because this certainly isn't Komatsuna. If I had to guess, I would say that was Mizuna. Certainly looks very much like it. And Komatsuna is nothing like this at all. That's got sort of rounder leaves, not these serrated things. So I've got some dodgy seed there, and that really does annoy me. So there's absolutely nothing I can do about it now. I can't re-sow at this time of year. So I'm just going to plant what I've got. Let's take a little look, see whether they are any good at all. If I can untangle them. Wow, that's not too bad. It's a bit floppy, but there's a reasonable amount of root there. So this fluffy compost doesn't do a lot for it, to be honest. Let's see. Yeah, the knife is about the right size. So if those are Mizuna, they don't grow as big as the Komatsuna, I think. So I can space those a little closer together. I'll just make a hole and drop it down in. I'm going to plant it a little deeper than it was, of course, as usual. Give it a bit better support. And yeah, I can probably get 3 across here. So I'll do that. Some of these are more substantial than others. I don't know why. The germination was patchy on some of these and really did differ in time to germinate too. So I've got plants of all sorts of different sizes here. Still a little bit of root in here from the peppers and other plants. I don't bother to take that out. I think it's better for the soil to leave it in, actually. So now I've got some Napa cabbage. This is a really late sowing for this, I think, but we'll see what happens. There's no harm in planting that out. And then I've got some tatsoi, and these are so highly variable. I've got some tiny little seedlings here and then some larger plants. So I think at this point I will pick out the better specimens, and I'll maybe plant, both of these can get a reasonable size. So I'll plant 2 rows down here. I think the Napa cabbage at the back and the tatsoi at the front. So I'll give these a lot more space, and that would be okay here, I think, for the tatsoi, and then there for the Napa cabbage. I don't know why these are such a mixed bag. Actually, the Napa cabbage isn't too bad. The tatsoi is all over the place. Right, let's have a look. What have I got here? I think actually that one may have developed a little too far for that cell, so I'll pick out that one there. It doesn't look too bad. Yeah, nice root system. Certainly not pot bound yet. That's great. I'll set it a little deeper as always, and that is it. I don't have to do anything with this soil in here. This is lovely. Even though it's had the peppers and the tomatoes growing in here, this is still rich and delicious, full of worms, good stuff. And I will put a heavy mulch of organic matter, probably horse compost again, in here in the spring, but these plants don't need it. I don't need to put anything in for these, I'm sure. Right. So, now the tatsoi doesn't need quite as much space as the Napa cabbage potentially, so I think that sort of distance for the cabbage would be all right. Let's see. Yeah, that's a nice one. Now the soil is quite moist at the moment still. You can see there's plenty of moisture in there. I will give these a drop of water in a minute though, because I want to make sure that they are nicely settled into their planting holes. Then I shouldn't have to water too often. Obviously this isn't on anymore, so I will have to do this by hand, but even so it shouldn't be much of a problem, not during the winter. Certainly not when the weather is miserable like it is now. So I'll plant these a little bit closer together. Well, I think that's more or less it for this greenhouse. It's always great when you see a bed finally planted up. Now these pepper plants, there's just the 3 left in here. These will come out in, I expect, a couple of weeks' time. So I will keep hold of the spares anyway, whatever I don't plant today. I always like to have a few spare plants in case something takes 1 or 2 of these out. And maybe I'll pop them in when these come out, but otherwise I'm out of space in this greenhouse, so I'm going to move into the second greenhouse, and I think I will start with some winter salad, and then I'll have a look and see what else I've got. So I've got a tray of mixed winter lettuce here. And once again, germination has been pretty poor in places because I will have sown these with several seed per cell. I don't know whether it's the conditions, the seed, or this awful fluffy compost I've been using, but in any event, germination has been really quite patchy in here. And also, you can see the time to germinate is really quite variable. I've got tiny little plants in here, and I've also got some nice specimens. So what I'll do today is just pull out some of the nicer looking ones, and I will keep the others as spares, or if I find another place I want to pop a few of the plants, I could always put some in one of the cold frames, one of the spare ones where we had the melons, but I don't know, this is probably more than enough for us. In here I've got some rocket. I think there are 2 or 3 plants per cell. These are looking quite nice now. And at this end I've got some Wheeler's Imperial cabbage. These will need to be potted on. I'll put those into some reasonable sized pots before I find a place to plant those. But I think what I'll do at this end is put a little patch of the rocket in, and then I will pick out some of these lettuce plants. So might as well use as much space as I've got here. I don't know what these will be like. Let's have a look. Oh, they're nice. They're nice little plugs. They want to be set a little bit deeper, as with all these plants, and then they will be, I think, quite happy. Now, rocket can have quite a reasonable spread to it, so you can space these out, but of course I want to be picking this, not leaving it to grow, so I probably don't need that much space. As always, I'm picking out the best looking specimens. I'll leave the others for spares. I won't need all of these. It's quite a lot here. Well, I found another tray of plants, and this is the worst of the lot, I think. This is supposed to be red giant mustard. Well, it's not exactly giant. These are too small to plant out. Germination has been shocking with these, so maybe I'll get to pop a few of these plants out later, but there's nothing worth planting today. And these sad creatures are supposed to be choice some. Now, something has had a nibble on a few of these. I think that is probably a slug. I've got one nice specimen and a few others that I might be able to plant out. It's all a bit rubbish, frankly. I am certainly not going to win any prizes for my winter seedlings. Anyway, I think what I'll do is just pop the choice sum in right along the edge, and then I'll get the lettuce in front. Wow, that one is just about perfect, actually. I thought this might be a little bit too far, but ideal root system on that. I don't think these need a huge amount of space, but then I don't have many of the plants, so I can give them plenty of room. Yeah, these are not nearly so well developed, but they might as well get out of these cells and into the ground now. So I'm just thinking about how I'm going to space the salad plants. Of course, they can eventually become quite a good size, but not if I'm picking the outer leaves. So I think I can get 3 across here. I don't see why not. If I put 2 in, that's giving them a bit of unnecessary space, I think. So I'll make 1 here, 1 there. And yeah, 1 in the middle. If I want to later on, I can always pull out the 1 in the middle, but I don't see any problem with that. Let's see what I've got. I know these are smaller cells, so yeah, there's a nice bit of root on that. That's not a bad little plug, actually. I don't know what varieties these are. This was a mixed bag of just winter lettuce. Should be quite happy, I would think, here in the greenhouse, at least until the spring. I think this greenhouse is more or less ready now too. I've got the rocket out this end, I've got a few choice some, then I've got the mixed winter salad. And I did find 3 ragged looking red giant mustard from the first sowing. A few plants that had survived the caterpillars, and I've put them in at that end, but they are not good plants. So whether anything comes of those or not, who knows. But anyway, that is it for this greenhouse. So the final thing I think is to pot on those cabbages. So these are still quite young. I mean, that one's a bit small, but these might be okay to pot on now. I'll pop one out and have a little look. I don't actually need all of these. Let's see. Wow. There's some root in there, not too much, but I think I will move these on anyway, just to get that job out of the way. I don't want these to become pot bound at all, so let's just drop those in, top it up with more compost. It's quite a nice cabbage, this one, Wheeler's Imperial. It's pretty versatile. It works well for spring greens, and it will form a very pleasant heart. So yeah, I'll just pot these up, give them a drop of water, and they'll be good for a while. The timing's gone a little bit funny with these because I lost that first batch. These probably ought to be in the ground by now, but I don't like to put the plants out until they are good and strong, particularly the brassicas. I always think they do better if you have a fairly substantial plant before you put it out. Less prone to pest damage. well, I'm really glad to get that job finished now. And that is almost certainly the last thing I am sowing or planting this year. I mean, we're in the middle of November, so I really don't need to be doing any more now. Of course, there's lots of winter work. The fruit cage needs to be covered with netting. It's not a fruit cage at the moment, it's just a collection of poles. I need to build a proper compost bin. There's a lot of stuff to clear and tidy up, so plenty of winter work to do. But I think for sowing and growing, I'm done now until I start the onion seeds in January. Talking of seeds, I have had a few deliveries of seeds for next year, and when I've got the last one or two, I will probably do a video or two on what I'm sowing and growing next season. But that is all for this video, so thanks ever so much for watching, and bye for now.